Unbelievable. Let's do some unbelievable, shall we? Give ourselves a smile and a cringe. Let's do this one first of all. It's criminal that the Metropolitan Police, the major police force, the biggest one in Britain that polices London, is giving up on burglars but has 900 anti-hate experts, writes former Scotland Yard Chief Philip Fowler. Excuse me. Genuine hate crimes are abhorrent, story says, and have no place in a civilized society, but are hate crimes generally worse than burglary, arson, assault and rape? Are the psychological injuries suffered by the victims of hate crimes worse than the psychological and sometimes physical scars carried by those who have been physically or sexually assaulted? Or had their homes ransacked and precious belongings stolen? Certainly, where hate is an aggravating factor in serious crime, it must be taken into account. But how much investigative effort should our overstretched police forces be expected to invest in dealing with minor verbal or written abuse that someone perceives to be a hate crime? He said things about me that weren't nice. Surely that's the same as gang rape. Bloody hell. It's a debate that must be had, which is why I welcome the intervention, this story says, by Sarah Thornton, head of the National Police Chiefs Council. She's calling for a refocus on core policing, for officers to be allowed to prioritise today's crime, such as burglary and violence, rather than hate crimes such as misogyny and historical sex abuse. It's about time we heard a police chief speaking common sense, because it's been a sorry few weeks for the reputation of the thin blue line, the story says. Now, I absolutely agree with the investigation of historical sex abuse, where it's valid, because that's part of uncovering what's going on now. But, you know, someone says something that you don't like. I mean, get over it, mate. Grow up. And so many crimes like burglaries and such like now are simply not being investigated by the police, because they don't want them investigated, because they're cutting back resources, so they're having to prioritise what they're going to investigate, and its prioritisation is hate crime, usually nothing of the sort, rather than actual crime on people and property. Anchorage lunatics seek to force women's abuse centre to accept biological men identifying as women. Oh, God. A faith-based women's homeless shelter in Anchorage is suing to block the city from requiring it to accept transgender women, which it said would violate its religious beliefs. And you know, how do we know that the people in men's bodies saying they identify as women, how do we bloody know that they do? Anyway, anyone can say it now. No biological confirmation necessary. Lawyers for Alliance Defending Freedom filed a motion in federal court seeking an injunction to stop the city from applying its gender identity law to the Hope Center shelter in Anchorage. The conservative Christian law firm based in Scottsdale, Arizona, says homeless shelters are exempt from the local law, yet the city has used the law to investigate, harass and pressure the downtown shelter. The injunction would mean that Anchorage can't apply the ordinance to the Hope Center in order to force the Hope Center to allow men to come into the shelter and sleep and undress alongside those vulnerable homeless women, Denise Hurl, an attorney with the Alliance, said Thursday. The shelter operators filed a federal lawsuit against the city and its Equal Rights Commission in... equal rights for who? How about equal rights for women? At its Equal Rights Commission in August, months after a transgender woman, i.e. a man calling himself a woman, complained to the commission that she was denied entry to the shelter. Because the matter is not resolved, Thursday's filing is premature, and so the request for injunctive relief, said Deputy Municipal attorney Dietra Ennis, who represents the city and its Equal Rights Commission in the matter. The commission began an investigation after the transgender woman complained she was denied housing at the shelter. Transgender woman, that means someone in a man's body claiming to be a woman. And you want to force that upon a women's shelter. Extraordinary, utter garbage and insanity. Stunning. The world is mad, run by lunatics. Oh, this one, we'll finish on this one. Oh my God. I saw this one this morning when I'm on davidicke.com when before I started recording this. Pensioner, 69, who identifies as a 45-year-old, begins legal action to have his age reduced so he can attract more women on Tinder. Tinder must be on one of these bloody platforms. I don't know, never heard of it. A 69-year-old Dutchman is battling to legally reduce his age by 20 years so he can get more work and attract more women on Tinder. Emil Ratterbrand argues that if transgender people are allowed to change sex, he should be allowed to change his date of birth because doctors said he has the body of a 45-year-old. The motivational speaker, a media personality in the Netherlands, is suing his local authority after they refused to amend his age on official documents. Mr. Rattelbrand's case has now gone to a court in the city of Arnhem, in the eastern Dutch province of Gelderland. He was born on the 11th of March 1949, but says he feels at least 20 years younger and wants to change his birth date to the 11th of March 1969. Mr. Rattelbrand, who has converted to Buddhism, said, "I have done a checkup, and what does it show? My biological age is 45 years. When I'm 69, I'm limited. If I'm 49, then I can buy a new house, drive a different car, I can take up more work. When I'm on Tinder and it says I'm 69, I don't get an answer. When I'm on, I'm 49 with the face I have, I will be a luxurious position. Transgender people can now have their gender changed on their birth certificate, and in the same spirit, there should be room for an age change. The Dutchman said he is discriminated against because of his age on a daily basis. Now, he may, I don't know, he may have done this with his tongue in his cheek. He may be literal, but the point is that once you take the step across the line of I can be treated as a woman or treated as a man, even though I have the opposite body type, simply by saying I identify with being in the other body type, then he is right in a way. Then all bets are off. There are no facts anymore. The fact that he's 69 doesn't matter. He can identify with being 49. Now, I can see all this with, be what you are and all that stuff. But what it means is that there is no structure left. There's just anything goes. And so everything becomes a mass blob of bewildered confusion. I mean, there is no radar. There is no foundation to anything, and that's what they want. Because what is what I just described? It's a complete state of flux, and from a state of flux you can go somewhere else, whereas before you couldn't because there was structure in place. Like men and women are biologically different. That is a fact, and it's part of a structure. There's men, there's women. But once you say naturally there is no biological difference, well there is. I mean, find yourself a mirror, mate. But once you say there isn't, then everything becomes a state of flux. Anything can be anything, and from that state of flux, you can then create a different world with a new structure, ironically, based on the way you want it. So there's method in the madness as it may be.